We're back to talk about designing for complex interfaces. So it's going to be a different kind of talk, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. This is me again if you want to find me. And after the talk, I will be here. I have 2 different shoes. You can find me easily, right? And I'll be outside if you have a question that just is more like face-to-face that you want to ask. Okay. I love my UI horror stories, so we're going to start with one. This is the true story, a true horror story. One day, a design team created an interface, and they were very, very proud of this interface. They felt it was the most beautiful thing they'd ever made. When they brought it to the client, they said, "Here is my work for you. And look at all the bells and whistles and the nice red bow." And they knew the client would accept it with great joy, and they would forever bow before the greatness of the design. Except when they showed the user, it wasn't received very well. The user didn't know what exactly it is they're looking at, didn't like it. No, they actually hated it. They just hated it. What did they hate about it? Everything. They hated how big it was. They hated its spaciousness. They hated the type. They hated the color. They hated the white space. They were wondering, what is this even? Did you even talk to us? And so the question I have when I look at this interface is, well, what happened? Because we all seem to think, at least in our industry, that simple and open and easy and wide is better, always better. Apple is simple, Google is simple, but your app is awful. And it's crowded, and it's terrible, and people hate it. And that's what we think. And there's a lot to that, of course. Much of that is true, but it's not always true. So the question here is, why did the client hate this thing, right? And that happens to us sometimes, doesn't it? Clients hate the things we make. It has happened to me, for sure. So in order to understand this, what we're going to do is we're going to think a little bit about users and how they use different kinds of interfaces. I'm going to go through that for a minute, and that's going to help frame our discussion for how to do complex UI. Because I know many of us do this, right? Many of us are making complex interfaces. So first, there are really 4 types of UI for our discussion today. So I separate this into 4 quadrants. The first is simply about frequency of use. So at the bottom, we have rare use. That means a digital product that we hardly ever use, just a little bit, maybe once a quarter, once a year, who knows? And then there are the products that we use all of the time, every single day. And you could imagine what those are. It's WhatsApp, right? Every single day. Now, there's another way to think about UI as well, and that is in terms of how technically adept a user is. On one side of the spectrum, we have these novice users, okay? These are people who are new. They're your mom, your dad, your grandmother. Really, most people. Most people have trouble with apps and sites and software. They're slow with them. They don't quite get it easily. They know they're novice users. They know it. And they're intimidated by technology. But then there's us, the power user. Everyone in here is a power user. There is nothing we can't handle. No matter how difficult the interface, we got it. Are we gonna read directions or get help? No, never. We can do it on our own, no matter what. That's us, no problem. So we have this grid where we have, frequency of use, we have technical savvy, and then we can map digital products to this grid. And so the only ones we're gonna concern ourselves with today are the two in the corner, because they're very different, and they're gonna help us understand how to make UI correctly by understanding the users. So we're gonna think about constant use by power users using something all the time, and we're gonna compare that with products that are used by novice users every now and again, rarely, and it's very different. So let's put some products there. All right, let's think about novice users first. If you think about the things that people use all the time, they're texting, they're in WhatsApp, they're doing banking, whatever, every day, and everyone needs to be able to do that. Everyone needs to be able to do it easily, no matter how new they are. Now, there are also some products that they're going to use rarely, and you can imagine booking a vacation. In America, doing your taxes with tax software. It's kind of hard in America. Or maybe it's doing a survey. Things that I won't do very much, but everyone has to do. So if we think about those examples, you think about some older screens from Airbnb. They're very simple. And notice, they're spacious. They're wide open. They look easy. There's usually only one thing to do. Find a place. That's all we have to do here. And all of the things we look at are very, very familiar to us. It's a map with some pictures. That's easy, even for novice users. When we go and we look at a given place, we're just looking at the place. One thing to do. We're looking at pictures of that place. Easy, open, simple, right? Mobile is even simpler. Just one thing per screen. Don't overwhelm me. Make it easy. No problem. Taxes in America, very difficult, but everyone has to do it. So software for taxes has to be extremely easy. Everyone has to be able to do it. So simple choices, wide open space, and pictures. Do you want this picture or that picture? Even if there's many choices, they're easy to understand, and you just pick the picture. Not hard at all. And notice how wide open it is, right? Lots of white space, very few words, very little to do. Same is true, of course, on mobile. Now imagine you had something wrong with your leg, and you got physical therapy, and it's all done, and the doctor hands you a tablet with a questionnaire. How did everything go? How did your treatment go? This tablet has to be super simple because anyone could be using it. Young, old, novice user, power user, people who have great manual dexterity, and people who don't. People who have poor motor control. What about people who don't see well, or are colorblind, or have low vision? All of this needs to work. So this is as simple as you can get. Can you find the start button? Does everyone see it? Yeah, that's how simple it is. One question at a time. Do an answer. Look at the next button. It's huge, right? And it's positioned perfectly according to UX rules. It's up near the top frame and the bottom frame. These are the fastest places for people to get to. Easiest, even with bad motor control. You can do it. It's been tested with people with bad motor control. No problem, right? Novice user. Okay. Novice users need these things. They need to know, is it easy? What do I do? Where do I go? Am I going to get it right? Am I going to look stupid? This is how novice users feel. So things have to be made for them. They want to be satisfied. They want to know, I did it. It was hard, but I did it. That's how they feel. And when they do something right, they have that good feeling. That's why everything is so simple. That's why everything is plain. That's why everything is open. That's why everything is spacious. One thing to do at a time. Super simple. Now, us, the power users. But we're going to talk about a specific kind of power user today. We're going to talk about expert users. That's us, but totally focused on a product. Like we use a product all day, every day. And you can imagine what that might be. Maybe it's something like Figma. You're in Figma all day, every day. Or maybe it's one of your clients and they're using internal software 8, 9 hours a day, multiple screens. It might be industry specific, healthcare specific, energy specific. You got to know a lot about the subject. You might even be trained on it and trained to use an interface. These are expert users, power users, excuse me, with a purpose. And so these are the people I want to talk about today, sort of like the people we often make products for. Now we're talking productivity, dashboards, internal applications, all sorts of stuff. And I know y'all are making these things. Big data grids, super fun. All sorts of stuff that looks kind of like this. Power users like us, expert users, we want to know, how fast is it? Does it help me do my work? Am I efficient? Am I productive? Do not get in my way. I know how to do things, and I need more data, more information, less clicks, less wondering, less scrolling. This is how power users feel. Let me do it fast. They care about being efficient. And all of us, I know we care about this when we're using the tools we use. I'm just trying to get my work done. That's why we can make products that are complex, that pack things in, that are dense, that use words that no one knows about except the expert user. And there's a million things you could do. You don't even know when you design a tool like Figma, you don't know what people are going to use it for, so it has to be possible to do many, many different things. And you don't know what they'll be. Open paths. That's what power users like. That's what expert users like. So it brings us to a bit of a problem, as you might be able to tell, when we're making digital products, because these two worlds collide all the time. In this case, this interface failed, right? Because it was meant for power users, it was meant for expert users, but designed for novice users. So all of the power users hated it. And you can see why they might hate it. Right? It was not made for them. Now we have basically a huge problem here, because complex UI today is still very often made by development-centered, development-led teams. And these teams often don't have designers working with them. They don't always have front-end developers working with them. They don't have UX writers working for them. They're just doing the best they can with the development team they've got. And it leads to stuff like this. Now, this is old, but it's real. And lest you think I'm looking at only old things, I'm going to show you things that are live today that development-led teams make. They understand the need for complexity, development teams do. They understand data. They understand functionality. They understand complexity. They got all that part right. But usability, no. They don't quite have that. Maybe they think, I know, I'll make it easy to use with icons. Now it's pretty and easy. And you end up with a car that you just throw everything on. More is better. That's how you get interfaces like this. Where I'm from in America, in South Carolina, if you want to plant a tree in your yard, you really need to call this 811 number. and a bunch of people come out to your yard and they spray paint lines all across your yard where the pipes are and the electrical lines are so you don't dig and break something. And then you're like, oh, great, I can put my tree right here, no problem. You plant your tree. You call them. Well, I don't want to call anybody, because I'm a power user. I'm going to do it online. And that's what they give me. Now, I don't mind. I'm a power user. But everyone needs to use this. So you see the opposite problem, right? But look at this error handling. Oh, this is live today. Today. Okay, 2 problems. Modern design approaches, and by that I mean sort of us, UX, UI. It's hard for us to do complex UI because it feels like we're breaking rules. It feels like we're making things compact and jammed in, and that's not right, is it? But if we just let development teams do it, basic usability, gone. So what do we do? Right. I can assure you that you can make complex UI successful, excellent, and good. This is an example of a complex project. You don't need to know what it is. It's about the energy sector. You don't need to be able to read it. Nothing. What you do need to know is that it's been tested with its users highly successfully. The users love it. They are productive with it. They're efficient with it. It helps them get work done. And save the company lots of money. Awesome. Totally doable. And we're going to talk a little bit today about how we got to this point with this interface and the principles behind it, which will help you think about complex UI a little bit differently, hopefully. Okay? So today I'm going to give you a little bit on complex UI done right. But the main thing to understand is that if you are considering your users the way we just said, you're already there. The rest is just tactics. So I'm going to show you several things. There's so much we can talk about. Just give you a little bit. Okay. The first thing that comes to mind, of course, when we're making complex UI is space, real estate, the screen. All right. We have to think about the screen differently. Bunch of stars. All right. Now, if I'm a novice user or just someone who likes stars, I look at this and think, what a lovely array of stars. However, if I'm a power user, I think you need to get more stars in there, man. And most expert users say, when they look at this, they say, could we have some more stars, please? And they mean it. They mean it. So the question is, how do we do that? So the first thing we need to do, of course, is conserve space. Now, some of these things are obvious. We'll start with the obvious and easy ones, right? So I think of the outside of an interface, the Chrome, as like the shell, right? What's around our interface? Simple, right? You've got something on the top, maybe you got something on the side. Very simple. First rule is that we need to minimize this shell. Minimize the shell. So let's start by seeing if we can make that side even smaller. Maybe go away totally, right? No specific nav. And we need to make the biggest interaction area just as big as we can make it. With these grids, you need horizontal space. You need lots of it. Because as you well know, after you design a grid, you know the client is going to add 200 more columns to it. All right, and you're going to have space because that's just what they're going to do, whether you like it or not. Happens every time. Okay, and we have to be careful of things like scrolling, which is a very normal user activity. It's one of the main things people learn first about the web. But here in this design, done by someone who shall remain nameless, the star of the show was the grid. So you see the problem right away. Everything above it is very big and spacious, and you have these address blocks, right? We had to figure out how to minimize all of that because users looked at it and said, I need to see more of the grid. Isn't that why we're here? Right? And our designer said, well, but isn't that top blue area so very nice? And they said, yes, it's nice, get rid of it. Okay. Data has to be scannable. Now, when I mean scannable, I think this audience, you know what I mean. Scannable means looking at something and at a glance, you know everything that's there without thinking about it. You have to know what you're looking at, fast, so you can act on it. And really what that means is all elements have to be very discreetly positioned, titled well, separated nicely. And then they could be as dense as you need inside. This is actually a screen from that software I was telling you about before. Easy to scan. You don't have to know what it means because only those expert users really know what this means. It's very complex stuff. But can you look at it and know fast? And we designed it until the users got there. Okay, icons. You don't really need them in complex UI. You want to avoid them as much as possible because they take up space and they require interpretation sometimes. But you do want to use icons where they help you save space and everyone knows what they are already. So here we're just using a calendar icon. Everybody knows what that means. Everybody. Tested very well. It saves space. We know it's about dates. Great. It has a purpose. We know what it is. It doesn't use space. Awesome. Good so far. Right? Okay. What we want to do is avoid anything huge, large, and clunky like this. Right? This was designed by a designer who wanted to show that they knew how to do complex UI. All they showed was that they knew how to do complex UI very badly. Everything is too big, there's too much space, it's hard to know what's going on, you have to figure it out, it's hard to look at, it's hard to scan, you'd probably have to scroll, it's a mess. It's a mess. This person in this part of their career was not understanding what complex UI was. Okay, another thing we have to do is hide complexity, all right? If we don't need to see it, we don't show it. And some of these examples are very simple. You might have an admin area, and you might have nav that you hardly ever use. If there's something you use very rarely, you hide it. You only show things that you use all the time. If I only have to use this nav bar once a month, don't show it. Don't show it. It only gets in the way. We're only going to show things that people use all the time, every day. You could even do this with forms. You have radio buttons, but there's complexity inside. So do you show everything all the time? No. If I make a choice that requires me to see more, that's when I show it. I show it when the choice is made. This hides complexity, keeps things small and tight, saves space, but it's still easy, right? It's still easy. This is not a super great design, okay? But it's an example of how complexity is hidden. So you see I select one row and I get all sorts of other stuff. This is basically a support ticket, right? And there's all sorts of different ways that we hide complexity to keep an interface as clean as possible. And for complex UI, we're trying to get as much in as simply as possible. It's a different way to think about that usability rule. And so you can see how we hide nav bars and things like this and teamwork. This is because we can't spend forever on data grids, there's a really, really good article on conserving space in, in data grids. I encourage you to read it. It's short, it's easy, and it's fun. And I think Andrew did a great job on it. So please do catch that. Okay. Now we want to preserve the things in complex UI that we must see all the time. There are certain things we have to look at all the time, all day. So we have to preserve it. So you think about a grid. Common everyday grid. We're going to come back to this grid a couple of times and critique it, right? But in this grid, this could go on forever. Lots and lots and lots of data. Probably way more columns than this. And after you start scrolling through this, it's difficult to understand where you are. So we've all employed things like this, just a simple little sticky header row solves a lot of problems. I'm sure many of us have done this. This is one of the simplest and easiest things that you can do with a grid that's complex, is help us to know what we're looking at fast. Even power users need something like this. Okay, we just had a wonderful, wonderful presentation on the beautiful complexity of type. Now I'm going to say for our complex users, we're going to just follow a very simple rule for them. Very simple, all right? We're going to use type that's made for the screen, that is specifically made to be shown on screen, shown on small screens, to be highly readable, highly scannable. Right? You need to use, in these cases, you need to find type that exactly was made for complex interfaces. Right? They have lots of these different qualities, right? You can read them really small, good numbers, all of it. Almost always sans serif. Here are a couple examples. There's many examples, but let's look at Roboto, right? This is made for the screen. It is made to be shown small. It's made for grids. It's what it's for. And on down, it gets sort of worse and worse and worse. And you want to avoid type that has ascenders, descenders, monospace. They cause problems in grid display. You want simple grid display. If you must display tons of data in a grid, must be clear and easy and simple and readable and scannable. Right? We need to be that. That's a UX rule for complex power users, right? So you see it here. This uses Roboto condensed. You can fit a lot of data in here and still read it. That's super important. Okay. You could even make grids smaller still. It's amazing how much people can take in complex grids if they're presented well. If you present a grid, it's easy to see with its rows and columns. This is just a piece of a grid. Grids like this in an interface I'm describing take up the whole screen, actually no, more than one screen, because users will have several screens in front of them and they have to scan these big tables all day. So you may as well make them super easy and clear to read. Color. Let's be careful with color. Okay? We're just gonna use it simply and effectively. We're going to not use it very much, is how we're going to solve this problem. Here are a few basic colors that you're allowed to use. No, I'm just kidding. You can use more than this. All right, but this is your baseline, okay? Don't do this. This is real. This is live today. And you could imagine the development team saying, you know what we need is color. And it'll differentiate these rows. And they probably love this. Oh, it's horrible. Okay. Oh, look at these. Yeah. Look at these rows. Someone thought, I'm going to do differentiating rows. I did it. Imagine looking at that all day. You'd probably hate the designer. Okay. We want to use color for things we do, for interaction, never decoration. Complex users don't want that from you. So if you look at this screen, you'll see there's really two colors in this screen. There's green and blue. Green is the main action button color. It's the thing you have to do on this screen. Other links are blue, easy to find. You could find without even knowing you're thinking about it. You know what you can do on this screen. That's what complex users need from you. It's the way you make things simple for them. They tell you they want things compact and tough and dense. And if you did it without caring about usability, you'd make it awful. But if you care about usability and you care about color, you can make density easy. And that's what they need. So color is about meaning. Now here in Western countries, these colors mean something. They don't mean the same things all across the world. But for our purposes today, color means something. And you should use it to convey meaning. Here in this grid, this is the interface I've been showing you. We don't know what this grid means. None of us in this room do, but the users do. And they know what these colors mean, and they can look quickly now because we've put them on a dark background. They pop out So you can see them quickly, scan them, and know what's happening hour by hour, because this changes every few minutes. And they could track something in the interface. All we did was use color to convey meaning as simply as we could. And then it can be put into a complex place. Okay. And of course we need contrast. This is another attempt at alternating rows that has failed, right? That early design example that I showed you also failed in this way. Because sometimes designers, and I'm one, okay? We think subtlety is beautiful, but power users need something less subtle, right? This is a little bit better. A little bit better. We can see what the rows are, and even that first column, we can see just fine. Okay, that's good. That's powerful. That works. You know what the users hated about this grid? You probably know already. They want more data in it. Too much room. We created it like this at first because we were like, so much space, and they're like, why is this space there? So we altered it. We didn't go too far, but we squeezed it a little bit more. I'll show you a little bit more about that in a minute. This is coming to Europe. This has been a thing in America. Accessibility guidelines have been a thing in America for a while. So what I want you to do is start thinking about it now. I think you're going to have to do it next year by law, is to make your work WCAG compliant. WCAG AA is really the standard. This is accessibility for vision in particular. This has to do with type size, how big your type can be, what backgrounds and color contrast it has. This is really easy. Once you learn it, it's super easy if you're starting from nothing. If you're fixing something, it's hard, just so you know. You'll probably be fixing a lot of stuff. And WCAG as a site you can go to and learn all about these guidelines, okay? Guidelines are fine, but you need to test them with real users in order to do them right. Here's an example of color contrast, right? This contrast passes, okay? This is like white text on black background. And then you could do these scanners and say this fails. This is sort of like subtle gray text on a black background. No way. You know, the stuff designers like usually fails, okay? Here's an example of someone trying really hard to use color for meaning. Green, good, red, bad, yellow, But you can't read it. It fails contrast. It's super difficult to read. Their heart was in the right place. They didn't do it right. Okay, content. When it comes to interfaces like this, every single word matters in complex UI. Every word. These are all the things that have to be written. Without a UX writer or a content strategist or even a designer, it's left to the dev teams to write all this stuff. And they do, including errors. And it's why you get difficult to understand stuff. Sometimes you get a developer who's really good at this, but that's a bonus. That's not a good process. Interfaces for power users, they have lots of words sometimes. All the words in this simple interface were tested with users so that they all knew what it meant and why, and it was written specifically for them. Error messages, test them with users. You can't just write anything in an error message. Even modals have to be so clear. Every word matters. Is it done or is it next? Is it continue or is it next? This actually matters. Right? Little modal descriptions matter. So the main thing to think about here is you just need to find a UX writer, right, for sure. That's what you need to do. But you also need to just use words that your users understand. It's okay. Like if it's a novice user, if it's my mom, it's going to have to be simple, plain language. But if it's an expert power user, well, maybe their jargon is okay. Maybe their acronyms are fine. They know what they are. So in this case, it's actually okay to use. We're taught as UX UI designers to never do this. But for power users, they want this. So we just have to pay attention to them as users. So I don't know what this is. You probably don't know what this is. Don't need to. If the users do, we're okay. We're okay. And in each case, users understand all these abbreviations and acronyms just fine. They know them by heart. And so it's faster for them. Yeah, who knows what this is, right? Users know. Okay, a little more grid guidelines. Almost done. We're going to tinker with display a little bit. Mostly when you start with grids, you're starting with some kind of framework, right? This is Kendo UI, older version of Kendo UI, which we use a lot. But you're going to want to do some stuff with that, because not all your frameworks are perfect. And we want to try to improve them a little bit. Usually that's by styling. You can do a ton with these things, but styling is probably the safest thing to do. And so you can make a Kendo UI grid look like this. Sure. You can make it look like this if you wanted to. The main thing is to focus on styling. Now, of course, if we're thinking about complex users, what we really want to do is this, right? And if we're really thinking about them and we show it to them, they're like, this is great, but can you do this, right? This is the way they're thinking. And they need us to make that tight complexity actually usable. That's why we're here. Okay, what's wrong with this? Can someone tell me what's wrong with this? Raise your hand and tell me, honestly, real quick. Just yell it out. Small. Oh, yeah, I can't even see it from here. Super small font. I don't know what's happening up top. Who knows what that is? System status or something? We have bad grid rows. We have 1,000 magnifying glasses. This is terrible. And I assure you, complex users, right? Power users hate the problems with this. They hate it. So they still need us. What's wrong with this one? Just yell it out. Yeah, colors are awful. Look at the space. It's like an Asia of space. Right? Doing nothing. Well, why? That's just bad overall design. Yeah, the colors, awful. Let's get closer. Maybe we shouldn't have gotten closer. It's doing nearly everything wrong. There was no UX team involved in this. Right? Everything, it's hard to scan. It's hard to know what to do. Colors bad. Waste of space. Header too big. I can keep going. But those are UX rules that we could all see, even though it's complex. Okay, to sum up, we did a lot of tactics. We could have done a workshop on this, just on the tactics you use to help complex users. But I want to encourage you that if you are just thinking about the users the right way, and as we'll see, doing some things with them, you are going to be fine. You can totally do this. So first rule, anytime you're dealing with a user that's different from you, is be close to them and spend time with them. If you want to know about how a power user, an expert user works, watch them work. That's it. Simple. As UX people, we know this. It's no big secret. Sit and watch them work if you're going to redesign something for them. Watch what they're doing and ask, hey, what's that sticky note for on your screen? Why do you need that? Well, why did you just go use that spreadsheet? There's always a spreadsheet. Why did you go do that? Is that something that system doesn't do for you? And you'll learn how to design software for them. Just spend time with them. Don't assume you know who they are. Don't assume you know what they want. Don't assume you're the designer and you got this. You've just got to understand them. That's not that hard. All the UX rules that we learn in places like this and in our study, they still apply. I'm not changing any of the rules. They're just different for a different purpose. My mom, when she's using text, it needs to be so simple, one thing at a time, so easy, so big, so spacious. But a power user, more data. Stop wasting my time. Give me more data. That's what they need. And so we apply UX rules to a different context. Same principles, same thing. And you should always test your work. I hope that in a UI conference that's understood already and that you're already doing it. But the only way to know if your design is right is to test it. You cannot expect it to be right if you don't, because complex interfaces are difficult to make, and maybe you can go too far in trying to pack density in there. The only way you know is to get it in front of users, and they will tell you. Users are really bad at explaining what you should do. They're terrible at it. They'll still tell you, but they're bad at it. But they're really good at telling you what they hate. They're very good at that, so you should listen to them. And they're very good at telling you what wastes their time, right? Those are the things to listen to, then you interpret. So test as often as you can. Test before you're done. Test before you code. Test on paper, anything you can do to get their input. As much as possible, real data, because these are power users and they care about the data. And if the data are incorrect or wrong, or lorem ipsum, that's all they're going to talk about. Okay, now, a couple things you could read. First, we blog about this all the time, okay? And so one of the posts we wrote sort of became this talk. And it's simple. It's, how do you design something? Well, it depends on how often it's used, right? That's a principle here today. And you can read about that. But also these two books. These books really helped me a lot when I was learning about complex UI and just needing to try things, particularly dashboard design. And the one on the left is great if you're a developer, because it's really about quantitative problem solving that you have to visualize. I think you'll enjoy those very much. Okay. You can do it. I promise. Okay, that's it. That's complex UI. Thank you.